Weekend Express. Now, the just concluded nomination exercise in Nyanza region by the Orange Democratic Movement saw a lot of chaos arise from the use of parallel vote tallying centers by some aspirants in the region. These parallel vote tallying centers are what NASA, the opposition outfit, has said it wants to use for the August 8th general election to guard against rigging in the elections. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission has, of course, dismissed this as illegal, but NASA says they will go with it. And in studio with us, Nelson Harvey, who is a lawyer and governance expert, Jarvis Bigambo. Bigambo, let's begin with you. The nominations saw a lot of issues in Nyanza because of these parallel vote tallying centers. We even had a situation in Kisumu where two candidates were both issued certificates as being the winner. What precedence is this setting for the general election now that NASA remains adamant they will use a parallel tallying center?
You see, no one stops any party in a political situation to tally their own votes or to get calculation of their own votes from their agents. That's why all parties or every candidate will have their agents at polling centers, polling stations, etc. But when it comes to a question of announcing official results, it is purely in the ambit of the IEBC. And also, in case somebody wants to raise a petition, they will have to bring evidence to the courts for the trials of facts. And that is when now the tallying center that you had, or how you collected votes, or rather evidence of this, or how your agents have given you all this information will make sense. But if at all the interest of, say, the opposition is to tally their own votes and also try to make them official in such a manner that competes with the authority of the IEBC, then to that extent, I think it is a recipe for chaos. Now, look at it this way. Going just by the evidence of what has happened in these primaries, especially, say, in the ODM strongholds, whether it's in Migori, whether it's in Kisumu, etc., whether it's in Siaya, Homa Bay, then you realize that we are staring into a storm. And we may want to be very careful when we talk about, and especially the opposition, when we talk about this parallel tallying center. The 2007-2008 experience should be something that should continue worrying us, that we must not make pronouncements or create a situation that will create serious contestation of results. Yes, the opposition, NASA, has a right to tally their own votes and know what they've garnered in various areas. But that must not be seen as though that, and they should not rally their supporters to believe that which they will announce, and not that which is what is true.
But going by what we've already seen, because yes, they have a right to have a parallel tallying center, but IEBC at the end of the day retains the mandate of announcing the final results. But looking at what happened in their strongholds, supporters, because aspirants were saying this returning officer is affiliated to my rival, so I'm going to have my own people affiliated to me. And so, as it is, we already have the perception, especially by the opposition, that IEBC is affiliated with the government, or it is being controlled by the government. And so at the end of the day, they say they will not trust IEBC results. Nelson, in terms of drawing that clear line between the parameters of having a tallying center and who at the end of the day announces the final results, how do we go about that?
Now, when CORD and finally NASA indicated to the IEBC that we do not have any confidence in your ability to give a credible result, IEBC response was swift and very basic, said, you should trust us, we are Kenyans. You see, such a statement coming from the IEBC leaves a lot to be decided. What Kenyans want is a credible, verifiable result. And if you look at it from this angle, you may now understand what was happening in Luo Nyanza. I do not think the parallel tally system that has given differing results in Nyanza was by accident. It's quite obvious. Raila was testing this system at home to see if it works. And if it works, then he will deploy it at the national level. And I think for good measure, any general who does not conduct war games within his forces and expects to go to combat without preparation is a general disdain for failure. To that extent, therefore, I think there's a lot to be learned from whatever happened in Nyanza. I don't think there is anything that came by accident. It shows us what is to be expected. But that's notwithstanding, I think one thing must be realized. The final authority of declaration of the winner of the results rests with IEBC. And much as that is appreciated, whoever is participating in this exercise must of necessity put into place mechanisms to verify, because if the Constitution requires that the results be verifiable, on what basis, therefore, can you verify these results if you don't have your own tally?
Right.
It just makes sense.
And how then do we maintain even the credibility of these parallel tallying centers? Because we're assuming if this is a NASA tallying center and you have a NASA candidate, then we're going to, do whatever is possible to ensure this candidate has the most numbers.
In fact, we must not even talk about the credibility of parallel tallying centers, because the moment they are parallel, then it questions the credibility of the principal institution that is supposed to be having a tallying center. And remember that we have a new constitution in place. IEBC is a Chapter 15 body. And also we know very well that for us to move forward in confidence in the growth of our democracy, it is important for us to trust our institutions. Is it not, for example, the position that raised the issue of lack of trust in the former commissioners and pushed for a new commission, for new commissioners, and now we have new commissioners and still have no confidence in the new commission and the commissioners? I think we're getting into so much ping pong, and we should not have a culture of failing to trust our institutions. Then for what purpose do we have these institutions? It is the people who must have confidence in the judiciary, but the judiciary has a role to play in boosting the confidence of the people by its acts or omissions. When it comes to political institutions, political parties must not ask too much of IEBC if at all they themselves cannot actually pull up their socks. In fact, the demonstration of the conduct and character of political parties through these primaries has made one thing clear, that one, political parties themselves do not have the capacity to conduct credible elections on their part. Then we must remember and look back, for example, at the words of JF Kennedy, President of the US in his former times, that ask not what America can do for you, but what you can do for America. If here we have to look at what IEBC must do for us, then we as citizens, we as political parties, what can we do for our democracy and to help IEBC to boost and to strengthen itself and in fact even become more credible? It must not be in the place of our politicians to disparage IEBC, especially at a critical time such as this. Because disparaging or in fact casting aspersions at the workmanship of the team at IEBC itself is a recipe for chaos. And one may say this, that is it possible that our politicians are preparing their supporters to reject poll results in August?
Right, but the bigger debate then has been, has IEBC, as independent as it is supposed to be, really come out and stamped its foot and held its ground and said, you can trust us and this is why? That, has IEBC come out and done that?
I think to that extent I must differ greatly with my colleague here. Reason being this, and I'll give a very good example. President Ronald Reagan said, you must be very, very, very afraid when you are in danger and somebody comes and tells you, I'm the government, I'm here to help. It just doesn't work. So this issue of trust of the institutions in government is quite alien. Look, I mean, trust and obey, the song we always sang in kindergarten, should always be limited to God alone. But when it comes to government institutions, there must be credibility, there must be accountability. Because when all is said and done, government is always formed as a result of a contest between two combatants. And despite the fact that it's the government of the day and has made a social contract with the individuals, the opposition has the mandate, the opposition has the obligation to put the government to account. And when all is said and done, IEBC is the government. So the opposition must be very worried, and they should never sit pretty and get comfort in the statement from IEBC that you can trust us. No, I mean, it will be foolhardy.
I mean, Jarvis.
But then, looking at what good councillor said, does it mean that IEBC, as an overseer of an election, and especially this coming election, is going to count votes for government? Is going to count the votes, or announce votes as or tally votes as voted by Kenyans? The thing is this: we must not assume that all institutions, of course, all institutions created by the Constitution are government institutions by way of being in the Constitution. But we, the people, are also part of government. Even, in fact, even today, when you look at the opposition and its composition, they are part of government.
Right.
So, in pursuit of creating stronger institutions, especially in a growing democracy, we must not be too skeptical. In fact, yes, these commissioners, for example, if it's the IEBC team, they were vetted, and they were, the public had a chance to raise anything that against any person who was, eyeing any, the position of commissioners. But much more than that, what direction do we take as a nation if at all we are too skeptical, far less trusting of the institutions that we ourselves have endorsed or have created? Now, I agree that we must not assume that the individuals we have in office, for example, IEBC, are purists and puritanical in nature to the extent that they may not fail the test of time when it comes to the execution of their work. But what we are saying is this: it is not about government and the opposition leaders. It's about these institutions serving Kenyans. In fact, we must demand always the best of them. The opposition must demand the best of these institutions as well. The government itself must demand the best of these institutions. Because today, realistically speaking, I doubt if any sound-minded person or any fair-minded person would, and in the office of the IEBC, for example, would want to plunge this nation into anarchy or into some political storm akin to that of 0708 by creating, a very contentious electoral result, through that announcement, especially the presidential vote. And if such person actually does exist at the IEBC. So yes, we have a new team in place, we have a new institution in place. It is up to us to demand the best of them and that they must execute their duties to the expectation of Kenyans.
How have we not done that? Because, Nelson, just listening to what Bigambo is saying, the government, the opposition and Kenyans, so to speak, are they not demanding the best from the IEBC? And if they are, then where are we going wrong? And why is IEBC not as trustworthy as it should be in the country?
The record of untrustworthy on the part of the IEBC, I think, is something that my colleague Bigambo must realize. I mean, look at what Kivitu did in 2007. I mean, he said without any fear of contradiction, I do not know where they are. For a fact, they must be cooking something. You understand?
Right.
So, I mean, this lamentation is not a lamentation without fact. It's a lamentation without history. And look, it's very good to have trust. You understand? But it will be foolhardy for a driver to trust that the wheels of his cars are okay now that they are a run-flat tire, and not conceive of a mechanism of how to remedy a puncture should that happen. This does not mean that Kenyans should be averse to the credibility of the IEBC. But the point being, much as these demands are being made, there ought to be a follow-up. There ought to be a mechanism within which to ensure that your demands are not shelved. They are complied with, they are acted upon. And you can only do this by repetition in the demand for accountability, by repetition in the request to be given the best of which this institution is supposed to give. And look, IEBC is not doing Kenyans a favor. Kenyans have sacrificed a lot. They have prepared for this election. They have put substantial resources to ensure that IEBC is equipped. But recent events have demonstrated quite clearly that despite all these mechanisms that have been put in place, IEBC is not prepared to conduct a credible and verifiable election. And Kenyans have an obligation to monitor. Kenyans have an obligation to speak out their mind. least we are taking the path of 2007, 2008.
All right.
It's something that should not be repeated.
Okay, so it is that monitoring that is in contention. Which ways will Kenyans monitor these
There's
Javas?
the question of monitoring, but also just connecting it to the primaries that have been conducted by parties here and the violence that has ensued in various quarters. Yes, we as a nation are not fully prepared. In fact, we have never been fully prepared for an election in this country, ever, since the first time we conducted the first election here.
Why do you say that?
Because the logistical issues have always been there, and they will be there. You can easily see it, unless maybe IEBC takes cue from NEC and Dr. Matiang'i, because for the first time we saw that there were no logistical and transportation issues of exam papers last year.
Right.
But much more than that, I have seen that the IEBC has been left alone in this whole process at the moment. For instance, when you look at the violence that has been witnessed in various parts, other critical institutions, other stakeholders in electoral processes have been silent, and in fact, they have removed themselves from this process. When you talk about national cohesion, violence itself is an ingredient of a nation that is on its way to falling apart. Where has been the NCIC in this whole process? In fact, it has not spoken. The National Commission on Human Rights has not spoken on all these issues. In fact, we have also seen that individuals have not been brought to book, especially those who are perpetrators of this violence. These things, by the way, are going to inform our election. More than that, when it comes to preparedness, the biometric voter identification devices and all the equipment that will be used in the election we have not had a dry run. Yes, IEBC has got its a timetable, but why should such a dry run happen 2 months to an election? So things that should have happened a year earlier, so that in case of anything, any interventions
can be done, because what happens if something goes wrong now?
Exactly. Is there a chance? Of course, we know that there is, a backup, manual backup that will be used thanks to the law and its amendment that was done. But is that a path that we want to continually beat? So when it comes to preparedness, we as a nation, one, are prepared to doubt the election results. IEBC has not prepared itself thoroughly to conduct a free, fair, credible, verifiable election that is true by way of everything that is evident to all of us.
I mean, because we've seen a lot of issues with the party register,
Yes.
names missing and whatnot, IEBC register as well.
Exactly. Go to other parts of this country. I travel a lot. You realize that there are some other areas that the natives have started throwing leaflets and sending information to the non-natives who are residents of such areas or counties or localities that if you are not a native of this place, you will not vote here. Now, these things are happening. I'm sure the security agents are aware of this. We have only heard that security agents will be everywhere, they'll be deployed to make sure that everything is safe. But that's not enough. We want to see a thorough cooperation, a synergy between the IEBC, the NCIC, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the police, working to make sure that people during elections will not be running away to their country homes because they fear the violence that may ensue. Because as we're speaking right now, people may want to start taking leave for about 2 weeks and monitor how the election will be conducted in the quarters of their rural homes. Now, that is not something that we should continually have in the body politic of our nation. We want to move ourselves from such so that an election does not disrupt the economy and the people's lives and their work.
All right.
So when it comes to preparedness, these issues should worry us.
All right. Now, speaking of worrying and preparedness, so what's the way forward now for IEBC and being in a catch-22 situation in the parallel center? It has already said no, but of course the opposition has not really taken that decision. But if it bars that use of parallel tallying centers, and then the opposition will feel disgruntled, and if it does not, and then we have also the other side, the government side feeling disgruntled. So Nelson, what is the way forward for IEBC? Because at the end of the day, disputed votes are the basis of electoral violence.
I think IEBC should do the honorable thing. Ordinarily, if a request is made in respect of an answer that should ordinarily be given, a refusal to give that answer elicits thoughts as to why the need to conceal. So if IEBC is going to do a credible and verifiable election, they have nothing to fear if NASA wants to conduct a parallel tally. I mean, NASA has realized that it will not declare the winner, and that is the reality. So IEBC should not have a problem. I think the best thing they should do is to stop this noise with NASA and do its job. Its job is to conduct a free, credible, and verifiable election. Give us a tally. Give us a final count. Let NASA do whatever they want to do. I mean, if there is a Premier League, we know who will play in the Premier League. If somebody else wants to have their own league, let them have it. I mean, it doesn't whittle down the credibility of the Premier League.
All right. And Bigambo has highlighted very well the under-preparedness of the entire country for this electoral process, not just the IEBC. So when in just 2 months, you know, very short time to the elections, how do we expect this to play out in terms of putting all these rights, all these wrongs right? Do we have enough time to do that? Are we headed to the election? We will be headed to the election with this same situation, and what will be the outcome of that?
The realization that everybody must now take into account and live with it with finality that an election must be conducted on the 8th of August 2017, irrespective of whether IEBC is prepared, irrespective of whether NASA or Jubilee is prepared. They have to participate and let this election take place.
Right.
There are no two ways about it. Now, that said, I think the question as to whether the time is sufficient or insufficient becomes very mute. Everybody must condense his abilities within that time.
Which is very alarming.
Yes, it is alarming, but it's a reality. It has to be done. And I think bearing in mind the solemn duty on the part of the IEBC to deliver, I think IEBC should be able to deliver. Yeah.
All right. Let's finish up on this particular topic, Jarvis. What are you expecting? Because, yes, we keep saying we're underprepared, but what are we doing about it as a nation?
I am riding on the crest of hopefulness and trusting so much that these institutions will do that which is expected of them. But trust alone does not suffice. It is important for us as a nation to realize that the greater calling of patriotism and nationhood is such that we must continually work in lifting up not just the spirit of the nation, but even the institutions of that nation, and even by way of our own character. The issue of expressing our dissatisfaction or legitimate discontent with the electoral process by getting on the streets and pelting motorists, causing violence, etc., is not something that gives any pride to any person, to any democracy. Just in the nominations alone, we saw that individuals who legitimately contested the outcome of various results took to the streets in Kisumu, etc., for like 2 days. It was a battleground. Now, if that is just party primaries, what about the general election? So it's important for us to see that we prepare ourselves, and even if we do not agree with a particular vote, whichever side it goes, we must not take to violence. Because if we destroy our roads, it is still the exchequer who will have to finance that for the repairs, etc. Some say that let the nation burn if this time round so-and-so does not win. Now, I think it has been underscored in the annals of history of various nations that those who have not faced any serious war will always call for war. But any person who faced war will tell you that if there is a path you must avoid, is that which leads you to war. We as a nation must try to avoid, and we as responsible citizens, then also the institutions that must must be at the forefront of protecting our democracy, must make sure that the process is credible, yes, that they help the people to understand how prepared they are, and to that extent, how prepared we are as a nation to hold a serious election. And the government on its part must not prepare for the election and for the peaceful election by deploying security forces and tanks in various parts. Tanks will not stop violence. Tanks will not make an election credible. So what we need is to make sure that we have a new culture. We need to unlearn some things and learn a new thing, new things. These new things must be how we must avoid violence or express ourselves unintelligently, emotionally.
And let's hope we can teach this old dog new tricks. But Nelson, seemingly it looks like the electorate also does not understand the process that follows after their candidate or whoever they're supporting feels disgruntled in an election. And so many times they resort to the streets and they move to violence. But where do you begin when you feel disgruntled in an election?
Well, for a long period of time, it was thought that any disgruntlement and dissatisfaction in respect of a result that is not desired was a problem that was limited to developing countries. Until recently, when Donald Trump was elected the President of the United States, and you saw Americans who have been in democracy for the last 30 years went to the street. They banned, they banned places. So there was fire. So I think this dissatisfaction amongst the population is something that must be understood within the realm of the dispute resolution mechanism. The dispute resolution mechanism always takes a long period of time to deliver a result. And that will always be the keg that will fuel some of these incidences of violence that we see. And much as there is an obligation on the part of the government to ensure that it does not produce peaceful results at the threat of the turret of a tank or the barrel of a rifle, the people must also understand that results must come out. And however annoying, however dissatisfied one may be with those results, they must leave it to the well set up dispute resolution mechanism. We've seen in the primaries, people have made noise, people have fought. What has it yielded? Some of them have had to spend several days in cells. It didn't change what was going on. So life will go on, whether or not you fight, whether or not you kill your neighbor. So the best way in which to ensure that if there is a dispute in respect of these results is to let the court process take its course and determine these issues.
I mean, you both have significant experience with the court process. Many Kenyans do not trust the court process, and like Nelson said, it takes a bit too long. So there's also the issue of how time efficient it is and how long it takes, how fair is the entire process. So that's another problem altogether that we need to deal with as a country.
For some time, the trust of Kenyans in the judiciary had waned. And when we had the new constitution and then, of course, moved towards the 2013 elections, there was significant trust in the judicial process. And that's why even the opposition at that time, or Raila Odinga and ODM and CORD rather, went to courts to contest the presidential result. And when institutions such as political parties choose to trust the judiciary, it also helps to boost the public confidence. But that does not amount to much. What is also very necessary is the institution itself, for example, the judiciary, to make sure that it weeds out corruptible individuals. We have seen a tremendous effort. And we also need to make sure that individuals within the judicial process who are corrupt or who in a way want to puncture or by acts of or omissions puncture the public trust in the judiciary, such individuals should be expelled from the system by the laid out process in law. But factually speaking, we need to appreciate that all of us, and especially when you look at the judiciary today, the Chief Justice, the judges, by how they dispense issues, and all the actors in the process need to help the judiciary become that solid institution. And much more, question arises in 2017, in the event that the election results are disputed, the political parties today, do they trust the judiciary to the extent that they will take the matters there? Or will they take it there just as a formality and still take the matter to the public court to handle it the best way they can.
Right, and which also warrants the question, is the judiciary prepared to handle electoral disputes just 2 months to the general election?
We've had in the past 2 weeks the judiciary, the Chief Justice, having selected a couple of judicial officers who will handle election petitions, etc. And it's now up to them to demonstrate fully that in case, and we're going to see an avalanche of petitions, we're going to see them. In fact, maybe this time around we're going to see a surge in petitions like never seen before.
Right.
And so the judiciary must prepare itself to expeditiously dispense with matters, clearly, thoroughly, openly, and not just dispensing with matters, but moving forward, we are going to appreciate that petitions are a way of life in our politics. So the judiciary must always up its game in handling election petitions.
All right. Nelson, final word. Is the judiciary prepared to deal with this election?
I think if there is any institution in Kenya that is prepared to handle the outcome of the August 8th election, then it is the judiciary. And I think we've seen in the recent past, elaborate mechanisms have been put in place. The Chief Justice has indicated that the court diary will be freed for a considerable period of time, not exceeding 3 months, to enable the judiciary handle this thing. Over and above that, there is elaborate legislation within the statute and even the constitution that now require that these election petitions be handled within a limited period of time. So, I mean, by December, we do not expect to be any outstanding dispute in respect to election petitions. Then there is the issue as to whether or not an outcome that will come out of the judicial process is one that is desirable, is one in which we should have faith or trust in. I mean, personally, this issue called trust never resides in my dictionary. I think you let individuals do their work. You can't say that you will trust the judicial process. It's composed of human beings. They can be torpedoed. They can be influenced. They can be
This is an
coerced.
institution that should uphold justice and fairness. You'd expect that trust should be one of the words that come in there.
No, in justice there's nothing like trust, because the legal process is kind of a definite science. If you're supposed to have been declared a winner in a particular process, and you're not declared a winner in that process, and the court thinks otherwise, there is an elaborate appellate mechanism, whether or not you trust the judge who's handling the case. And I don't agree with my colleague that any individuals who does not have trust in the judicial system should be ostracized. It just doesn't work. I mean, for a long period of time, we've seen a lot of endemic corruption within the judicial system. And you can imagine, let's say like 1 million voters in Kiambu making a decision to elect a governor, and then one judge sitting in Kiambu Law Court deciding who should be the governor. It doesn't resonate with common sense, but this is the reality of the judicial process. But if it fails, then you can move to the second level of the appellate process. But I think overall, the systems are in place. They're supposed to function. But if they don't function, there are alternatives within which an aggrieved party may still pursue his grievance up to the last course. And one thing that will always come out of a judicial process, you need not always agree with the final outcome, but you need to obey the final outcome.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for engaging us on Weekend Express. Advocate Nelson Harvey and governance expert Javas Bigambo joining us on Weekend Express, taking a look at the week that was a very busy week in politics in the country. And that conversation brings us to a close here on Weekend Express. We thank you for watching. My name is Michelle Ngele. I'll be seeing you later on at the top of the hour for more news.